All right. Sha.
Sha. So, solar plexus. Okay, so, and of course, even with the physical configuration of the solar plexus, there's some variance, right? So, some systems have it lower, some systems have it a little bit higher, some systems, like the Taoist system, includes the heart, so it kind of controls that whole territory. And so we usually think of the solar plexus as being, if you find that xiphoid process, which is the tip of their sternum that extends, between the ribs, just below that, you can kind of push your finger in there, and you get that. If you go deep enough, you get that little bit of a sicky feeling. That's you're in Sha at that point. Okay, so and what does it do? Sha, we can think of it. It controls respiration, respiration in all aspects of what that means. But in an energetic configuration, we can think also that it controls internal pressure. So it's sort of the counterpart to Tai, which is controlling external pressure when we think of it that way. So this is how we adjust to internal pressures. So, of course, in our society, stressors and things like that, Sha is a great one to have on your side, right? To build up and know how to dissipate and sort of dismantle the stress when it comes in. How can we acclimate to it and sort of give ourselves a break, and then long enough for us to take care of it in whatever way we need to, and then it'll naturally dissipate, right? But Sha has that ability to sort of help us with that. Doesn't let us drive up our blood pressure too high, or cause us to really focus on the stress and get all jammed up by it. So when Sha is working properly, it helps to put it in the right frame of mind and helps disperse it. Doesn't let it concentrate in a single place and cause havoc.
So again, that idea of control.
And from when we think about it from respiration as well, right? It's not just the breathing in, but it's also the breathing out. So, like a lot of times with asthmatics, it's when they're getting that their bronchioles constricted, right? It's like it's hard for them to breathe out, right? So it's hard for them to push the air out. It's not so much that it's difficult to drag it in, but they can't get enough, going out. So, and the rescue inhalers and those things, they relax those muscle structures almost immediately. And so when that relaxes and they can do that, it's like they draw a breath in, but first usually what happens is they're like, they open up and their breath is going out. So again, pressure is concentrated in a certain territory. It can be really dangerous, and physically and mentally, right? And so, if Sha is active, or we can activate it even more strongly when we're in those situations, it can help to reduce that pressure and dissipate it and spread it out more so that it doesn't concentrate and cause us harm. So that's Sha, basically. Yeah.
Cool.
Yep.
All right. So what's the
configuration?
Yeah,
so the
yeah.
configuration is, again, my fingers are like this and here. And so this one, it's the index finger out and the pinky out. Okay. And my thumbs are still in that kind of humped up configuration. And the beam is coming from between those two fingers. So the index and between the index and the pinkies.
Okay. Okay.
Yep. So, and that's it. And again, bottom is open. Everything's in that position. So, and that's it. And I'm sending the beam to the diagram. And this is the Sha diagram. Yep. And so on this one, you're just going to go right in the center.
Okay.
Yep, right about there.
Now I have a question about the beam. When the beam is coming out, when you put your hands in that configuration, does a beam of energy naturally just start to project from that area?
Yeah, you imagine it so that you can see it in the beginning, right? So you use your mind to imagine the beam coming out from that place. But as soon as you put your hands in those configurations, it's already extended.
So when we're doing the Kinjas and we're breathing and all that, and we're actually doing these exercises with them, you don't necessarily think of our ability or lack of ability to imagine and hold the image of that beam as being linked with the effectiveness of the practice, because
No.
that beam is coming out and connecting with that diagram regardless of whether you can imagine it perfectly or not?
Right.
Okay.
Right. And so you do your best, right? With, again, don't, one of the things that we're trying to change with people is that, imagination is not a bad word, right? So it's like we stimulate that imaginative, faculty in our minds to a really high degree. So, but it's not just about visualization either, right? It's about, sensing where you are in space and time and all of those things that we think sometimes are, more like fantasy, like it's not just daydreaming about, nice things or whatever, or what would it be like if, but it's like a lot of times using that, think of it this way, like we know scientifically that when somebody who's, let's say, when they run, and they've run for a decent amount of time, and they're really into it. They can feel it. They know what it's like to feel their body moving on the road or wherever they run. But if they're in a meditative state and somebody's doing an EEG on them and they're looking at their brain waves, we know that when we compare the two things side by side, then we see that when they imagine themselves running, that the same neurons are firing in exactly the same patterns as if they physically were running. So the brain doesn't understand the difference between, imagination and actually doing it. Now, the motor neurons probably aren't firing to the degree, they are firing, but not to the degree that they would be. And we've all had these little experiences of that, right? So, you're starting to fall asleep and it's been a long day and you're really relaxing and you've gotten really relaxed. And all of a sudden you have this almost like a little preliminary dream, right? Where you're batting away a bee or something, and you wake up because your hand actually makes that motion, right? So that's an imaginative faculty as well. It's like, but we're in that perfect equilibrium of being very, very relaxed. The senses are starting to go offline. We're right at that hypnagogic state. We're starting to get the visualizations of the dreams coming on, and and as we do that, and it's such a maybe a startle response or whatever that I see that, and in that motion of flicking away, I wake myself up because my hand actually makes that motion or something pretty similar to it. So the brain is stimulating that physical motion as well. So, when I imagine that I'm seeing a beam of light coming from that place to there, it helps to intensify and magnify that. So, and then when I compound that or finish the feedback loop by seeing the end result that I'm getting from doing these practices, it compounds it even more. And it's like, oh yeah, okay, so my imagination in doing that is making it even stronger than it would be if I just put my hands together and just didn't do that part. So it does have an effect, and it increases the effect as time goes on. So yeah.
Do you think of Sha as also helping us in our deepening our meditations as well? Because like a lot of times I think about, like, as you start to progress into deeper states of profound relaxation, a lot of the times you can get like a fear response, right, that comes up.
Sure.
That kind of can like shock you out of it because the sensations can be so odd or
Right.
different or whatever. Do you think of this as being able to stabilize your internal response to those experiences better?
Yeah, of course, because it's internal pressure, right? And so it's stimulus from the internal, like I'm going inside myself when I'm doing, meditation. So as I get deeper and deeper, and if I do come up against something or some thought or whatever that sort of startles me out of it or whatever, Sha will help to smooth that out, dissipate that, so that I can sort of, again, look at it, almost logically, look at it and say, acknowledge it and then let it go. And so then I can keep moving on instead of like bouncing out of it and then going like, oh, what did I do? Then you're mad at yourself. Then you got to try to go back in, but you're already upset. So it's harder to get in there.
Right.
So it's like this, in this way, Sha sort of takes over and helps to dissipate those things, gives us let's say a little bit more time. So there's the stimulus that's there. And instead of it just having the immediate response from me, it's almost like it slows things down a bit so that I can see it acknowledge it, know what it is, and let it go as not being something that's crucial for me to react to at that moment.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So as we practice this one, we might have a better, better control over that idea of acknowledging something and let it go, letting it go. Because a lot of times it can be like, oh
Sure.
yeah, acknowledge it and let it go, and you're like, I don't know about that let
Yeah,
it go
yeah,
part.
yeah, yeah, yeah. You might be able to let it go, but I don't.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. Yeah, and again, bringing it back to the practical in our daily existence. How many things do we carry around with us that we don't need to? Even if we're not going to act on it, right? It's like, but we still carry the stuff around, and it's draining our energy. And it's like, if everything that you had that you were ready to deal with, but you were carrying around, if that was a 2-ounce weight and I was putting them in a backpack for you to carry around all day long, how many hundreds of pounds can you carry all day long, right? So, and Sha has a tendency to help us, dissipate that, help us to let it go, like the breath, it's like we can't just draw breath in, we have to let it out too, right? Inspiration, expiration, right? So it's like I'm letting it go. And this chakra helps to regulate that balance for us, and I find it, it's just invaluable for helping people in a stressed out situation sort of cope a little better. And again, because it's linked with respiration, we naturally have that sigh of relief. Like we're been on our feet all day. As soon as we sit down, it's sort of like, oh, there's that letting it go. Letting that release go of fatigue or whatever it is. And the same thing with, it could be situational too, right? So just something mentally that's been draining on us, and all of a sudden it gets lifted, and it's like that. It's such a natural response for people to have that. I mean, across the board, it's like when something just, comes to fruition for them, it's just like this instant letting go of everything that's been bound up. And that's Sha. That's just the physical manifestation of that. But internally as well, it's that concentration of energy that's being dissipated, basically, right, broken up and let go.
It's interesting that we can really feel it during those experiences, especially right in that area. It's this almost release that just opens up and everything.
Right.
That letting go, that sensation of letting go during those times can be really profound. It's just interesting to be able to link it back to, oh well, that's where that
to correlate
area
it between the physical and the energetic. It's
people say like, oh, it took a weight off of me, and they're always, but it's always right around that Sha area that that they're referencing.
Right. And it's funny when, to look at the opposite side of it too. I mean, people will say they have butterflies in their stomach, but it's usually the solar plexus that they point to. It's that internal pressure is attacking them in some way. Like obviously butterflies aren't that, and it can be a good thing as well as a not good thing, right? It could be excitement about things, and you get that, that little sensation, that fluttering in that area, but it's usually right in that Sha area, right? It's not like, okay, my stomach, it's like, not so much. We have those sayings because it's sort of like in that center line, right? But it's really, when we think about being nervous or being excited or all those things, it's really right around that Sha territory that's happening. It's just giving us an indicator that, this is a different type of internal pressure, and I'm working to sort of dissolve it and get it back on track, right? That's why a lot of times, what's one of the ways that we have a tendency to physically dissolve tension? Laughter. Where does laughter come from? It comes from Sha, or a combination between Sha and, when we say a belly laugh, right? Meaning a really hard laugh, natural hard laugh that you can't restrain. That's Tai, right? That's that external pressure helping the internal pressure. It's a release valve letting it out. So we get that really deep, it's not just a little chuckle, ha 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 ha. Well, that kind of feels like, even if I say the word or if I say the sound, ha, it resonates in that territory, right? But a belly laugh is like deeper, right? It's really like a body racking laugh, right? It's an awesome thing to experience on a regular basis, but that's that external pressure, that's the release valve of that, letting that out. And so that tension that can just build up and build up and build up, and then all of a sudden, whether it's intentionally, you have friends that can do that for you, or, you do it for yourself, or you're watching something. I mean, you've been around me enough to know that like at least a few times a day, I'm putting something on that makes me laugh like hell, because it's so clearing. It's so it regulates the pressure of what's going on, whatever it is in my life. I mean, I think, generally I have it pretty well under control, but I think part of it is because I have a tendency to do that on a regular basis. And, humor and laughter are such a big part of my life that, it's a great way to stay healthy and keep everything working in a good way and not let anything build up too long. So, yeah.
I remember you saying that was one of your, was it one of your acupuncture teachers that said that was one of the best cures for insomnia?
Yeah, yeah, he did. And he would tell people, he would treat them, and he might give them herbs, but he would say, go home and watch funny movies. He also did that with cancer patients. He would say, I know it's mentally difficult on you, so there's that Sha of internal pressure building up. And, the last thing you do when you get a bad diagnosis most times is, you're not feeling like laughing, you're feeling like curling up in a ball and crying yourself to sleep, right? So it's, so he would say, I'm going to treat you and we're going to do this, but, go home and put on, of course, at that time it was like, put on the VCR, so put on the tape or watch only funny movies. That's what he would say. Watch only funny movies, nothing else. And, and ones that really make you laugh, not just chuckle or kind of smile, but you really need to laugh, and it will balance the pressure in your body and help to settle things and get you back on track. It was the best medicine for that. And
yeah, I remember you telling me that like when you belly laugh, it's like this, didn't you say there's like this bouncing type of energy that moves through you that emanates out from the center? Can you describe that?
Right. Well, it's pretty much what you described. I mean, when you belly laugh, it's sort of like when you really have that hard laugh. I mean, there are times when we laugh so hard we're practically on our knees, right? Or like we're doubled over and it's still going, and it's that pulsing that goes out where you can't catch your breath. Sometimes you're like, stop, right? Because I'm going to pass out. I can't breathe anymore. So it's that pulsing out of that, that energy is moving through you like a wave. But it's not just moving out of you; it's moving through your channels and opening all those things up. So it's such a a good thing to do. A lot of times with people even with stomach conditions where it's hard to digest or they're having problems with that, they'll even give them those sounds to say like ha, but they'll do it like like ha ha. So at the end you feel it like right in this territory and in the stomach, and so it helps to clear that, and they think that reverberates down into that territory and opens the channels up again and makes all the processes better. So they have a lot of things like that, different sounds and the inner smile again from the to do that and to sort of help coordinate the internal parts of the body. They didn't have a lot of surgery until later on and those types of things, so it's like they had to find ways that would help people with conditions that were internal that might need surgical intervention the way we think about it today, but back then they didn't have that, so they had to find ways that would stimulate in a very strong way those channels and the opening to let the body get back to its natural state. And so they would use acupuncture and herbs and tuina, which is like their physical therapy massage and all kinds of things to do that, but also these sounds and of course qigong and all these energetic exercises to balance out the physical parts. And so that was the combination. It was a total immersion into getting everything open and flowing again in the right way.
Right. I remember you saying that there's only one bad: stagnation.
Stagnation is the only bad.
Right.
Yeah. So things don't, they had another one of those axioms. What moves is alive, what doesn't move is dead.
Right.
That's it. So
this really helps to get things moving and
keep things moving.
Right, right. And within all those examples that you gave, it's like, I'm always constantly listening to all the things about the laughter and all that, but then also tying it back into again these kinjas, that while we're doing them, those are the things that we're those are the types of things and territories that we're actually stimulating with these breathing patterns and with these hand configurations. It just at least for me, it's always good to, when you're talking about those things and giving those examples, it's great to be able to reframe all of my experiences throughout the day, like watching funny videos or whatever.
Right.
But then also saying like, okay, yeah, but when I'm sitting down to do these exercises, it's not just some amorphous energy thing that I'm doing. It's like these are exercises that have this real practical consequence, again, in my good consequence or good feedback loop in my body, and for my mental health and my physical health throughout the day. It's just, I don't know, it's just good.
Yeah, and one last thing with Sha is that, I mean, and this is just probably a little caveat, but I've learned over the years that it has one major benefit for practitioners of any kind of energy medicine, and really should be for anything, but well, let's focus on what we do, right? So, is that in regulating that internal pressure, if it's balanced properly, we won't slide into the real catastrophe of taking ourselves too seriously. So it's like, because a lot of people get trapped into trying to gain approval from the outside for what they're doing, and trying to convince other people that what they're doing is real and that it's actually working, and that can set up a lot of resentment inside, and that's an internal pressure that can really drag you down and really affect your practice. So it's like, developing Sha and all of them, but Sha is a specific sort of tuning fork. It helps you not to go to that place. It's like you learn that the only approval you need is your own, and that if you're seeing effects from your work, then that's all you need to do, and that's okay. That's perfectly fine, and that there are other people of like mind that are out there doing the same thing, and you'll coordinate with them, and you'll trade information back and forth and help each other, and that's really a good thing, and it's a way to help keep that equilibrium there. But it's always a sad thing to see somebody who has a lot of potential sort of go down that path and just be really taking their stuff so seriously that it's actually limiting them in some way. So Sha is a good way to release that pressure, and laughter and joy and interacting in the world and not being recluse and all of those things. It's like, it's a really great way to balance that energy out and not let it get stagnant and concentrated in a knot in that area, not in your stomach, right? So that's that stagnation of energy in that place, and can really turn into bitterness and resentment, and all of those things are just never good for anybody. So Sha helps to keep that in balance and dissipate those things in a good way. So just my 2 cents on that.
Nice. Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah.
All right, man. Thanks.
All right. You're welcome.